Hey there, hero lovers. Welcome back to episode 6 of the 2020 Rewind, my showcase of 20 more level 50 characters on the City of Heroes Homecoming servers, the Excelsior Shard. I'm going through a bunch of builds, a bunch of strategies, a bunch of tactics for a bunch of different level 50 characters that I've assembled over the last few years playing City of Heroes Homecoming. I just kind of wanted to share those with you because I've seen a lot of builds show up on the forums and Reddit and wherever else, and there's a lot of a lot of talk. There's a lot of oh, this build is awesome, but I always wonder what is it really like. So I want to kind of put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to be showcasing all these builds, not bragging or whatever else. I'm just saying, hey, here's a bunch of builds that I've put together over the years that I think work pretty well. They're not super duper expensive. I mean, I have a few that are, like a billion or whatever, but for the most part, a lot of my builds are like a quarter of a billion, 200 million, something like that, maybe 500 million, which is very reasonable given, the amount of just sort of rare stuff that I'm throwing in here. But the build today for Venom Kiss, my second controller, this ice control, this poison secondary, psionic mastery. She's what I'm calling a PROC-TROLLER. So she's kind of going to be an expensive build when you look at it, but for the most part, she's one of my more gimmicky, kind of fake, if you will, builds that I'm putting together. Unrealistic, perhaps. I don't know. But let's go ahead and take a look at her, and you'll judge for yourself. And then, of course, I'm going to go ahead and show you some solo, action. And I'm going to go ahead and show you some team action so you can decide for yourself, is this build as stupid as it is or as good as it potentially is? Because this build is one of those classic, you see it on, posted on the forums as one of these proc monster god builds that's going to do 500 damage with my hold, and bro, I'm just mopping the floor out of the pylons. Like, yeah, sure. Does it actually work in the real game is what I want to know. I don't care what mid says the damage per second is. I want to know what it does in reality. So I'm going to show you here on paper, right? I'm going to show you the engineering or whatever, or the science, and then I'm going to show you the practice, the mechanics of it in an actual game scenario. So let's take a look at what I've got here. Ice control, I still think, in my opinion, it's one of the weakest, if not still the weakest control set out there. Although it has been improved from when it was on live. There have been some changes made to it that make it a bit better. And I'll kind of hit those as I go through them. But, it's still not a very strong hard control set. It's still relying a bunch on soft controls, slows, and confuses that just open you up to extra damage coming in an alpha strike, that sort of thing. So it's not like powerful, plant control where you're just confusing everything, or mind control that's got layers upon layers of controls. So let's take a look. We got your single target control here, single target immobilized, chill blame. So that does, what it sounds like. And then notice though the secondary effects on these, that's where I'm going to be leaning into this. And if you've watched any of my other stuff, you usually hear me talking about this. I'm usually looking at builds and their powers, not for what the that power does, the primary function. I typically look at its secondary additional things, because I think that's where you can come up with some cool synergies or some cool like amplified, craziness. And so ice control, the one thing it for sure has, and that soft control I already mentioned, is the minus speed, minus recharge. So here's one power that has it. And when we start looking at poison, you're going to see probably where I was going with the concept here of the synergy. Uh, on top of this whole proc monster thing, which I'll explain that in a second as well. But there's Chillblain, minus speed, minus recharge, immobilize. Block of ice, minus speed, minus recharge, a hold, single target. Frostbite, we got a AoE immobilize. I think it's it's a targeted ranged AoE, so it's like a splash. But again, minus speed, minus recharge. So your first three powers, your first three essentially attacks as a controller, are going to give you minus speed, minus recharge to the targets you're hitting with it. And the numbers are pretty solid. If I pull up the pop-up window, see for yourself. So Chillblain, for example, here, click on this one. Chillblain we're looking at a minus recharge of 25% debuff. Then we look at Block of Ice. The debuff on that one is 37.5%. So we're already at like 60% recharge debuffing. Throw in Frostbite. There's another minus 25% recharge. So we're already at what, 90%, 80%, something like that, minus recharge just with those three powers. And that's pretty much like your opening 1, 2, 3 attacks against some enemies. So you're already going to be dropping their recharge down to like half of what it normally should be. So that's not going to prevent you from getting alpha struck, right? They're going to fire at you, but waiting for their power to recharge is where you fill in your gap and go to town on these guys. And that's just those three powers. So let's keep looking to see what else we're talking about here. All right, so then we go on. We've got Arctic Air. Here's your probably your bread and butter power. I think it's actually overhyped. I don't think it's that great of control. Actually, I'm going to say it's downright control. It's actually, in my experience, a damage mitigator. It's more like a resistance shield than it is a control. Now, hey, why do I say that? If you take a look at it, right, it's got a confuse ability, which is why it's a control. But the confuse doesn't last very long, like it's saying like 7 seconds or whatever. That's against even levels. So you start taking on +3, +4. Your confuse is going to last like a second, 2 seconds, right? So you're not like confusing people and they're going to go wander off and murder their entire, teammate group, right? They're going to, for a second, like maybe shoot somebody else, or for a second look around confused, like, what am I doing? It also has a little bit of a fear component to it, so an afraid condition, mag 3. So again, a couple seconds of them going, oh, what am I doing? So really, it's this little minimized amount of time here. And even, I think this is what, and again, I kind of get confused. Okay, so I think this might be the main confuse if they stand in there, mag 3. But even if it's 20 seconds, and this is the containment value, I think that's what the green one means. The 20 seconds again is going to be 5, 6 seconds against +3s and +4s bosses, right? If you're fighting a +4 boss, that guy is 6 ranks above you. And even if I'm incarnated, he's like 5 ranks above me, right? Because +1, +2, +3, +4, then lieutenant and boss level, they keep going up. So the duration of the confuse is not much. The duration of the fear is not much. And you got to be in melee with them. So the best you get out of this is this temporary confusion where maybe they pop off a couple shots, then they attack you, then they pop off a couple shots to somebody else, and then they attack you. The real benefit here is, again, this minus recharge. Look at this, minus 62.5%. The slow is going to be, what, 81% slow, so they're not able to move. They're not recharging their attacks. They're occasionally confused. They're occasionally afraid. So what this translates into is, at the end of the day, it's like reducing your incoming damage from melee, because you have to be in melee to have this thing take effect on people. The range of this thing is a 25-foot radius, so that's pretty big. So anybody within 25-foot radius is maybe having their damage output reduced. I'll throw a number out there, 50%. I don't know. So it's kind of like a 50% damage reduction more than a control, if that makes sense. The exact percent of reduction, I don't know. I've never actually quantified it, so I'm just kind of throwing that number out there as a potential. But that's what I mean when I say it's not a control. It's more of a damage mitigation shield. But you gotta be in melee, and you're gonna aggro, right? They're gonna snap out of this confusion and this fear at some point and go, oh, you, and they're gonna shoot you. Okay, so that's where you got some issues relying upon this as some hard control and I'm going to lock down the whole group. No, you're not. Okay. All right, let's continue then. But I do like the fact that it has that huge recharge, 62. Remember, we were already at 60, 70, 80% from those other powers. So now you're throwing another 60 in there. So now we're at like 130, 140% total minus recharge. Cold Snap is the other thing. Now, back in the day, you typically would skip Shiver and maybe just take Arctic Air if you were playing a melee styled control. Or you would flip that around if you're playing range control. You would skip Arctic Air and you would take Cold Snap. I kind of broke my own rule here. I went with both because Cold Snap is improved since Homecoming has buffed ice control overall. so far none of the stuff I've talked about has been a buff, but this is the first changed power from live that ice control is a little bit better now. Cold snap, it still is this cone. It's still minus speed, minus recharge, which is why I really want it. But it also now has a fear component to it, so it is another form of control. It's soft control, right? I mean, a feared target can still initially attack you with that alpha, right? It can still kind of snap out of its sphere and then shoot you. So it's not a lockdown, take them all out type of control, but it's got a decent duration on it, just like kind of the confuse has okay duration. But again, when we start talking about plus threes, plus fours, bosses, this 20 some seconds is not going to be a lot, right? They're going to be afraid of you for a few seconds. So again, it's kind of like a damage mitigation rather than a control. So it's going to get them for a second to cower, and then they might snap out of it and shoot you, and then maybe they cower again, and they shoot you again. But the big thing I'm looking at here is check out this minus recharge. I believe that's the minus recharge, the 81%. It's gonna pop here. Yeah, so 81 more percent minus recharge. So you hit them with this 81%. They're feared a little bit. You then walk into melee there with Arctic Air, which has the 60 some percent debuff, right? Now we're at 140, almost 150% debuff. You can throw out your Frostbite, right? Your immobilized. There's another 25%, right? So start doing the math on these things. You're like totally screwing the recharge 60%, 90%. Then you got another 25, 115%. You block of ice whoever. There's another 37, right? Then you hit him with Chillblade. So whatever that main target is, you were going after some boss. You just leveled their floor, their recharge by 200% debuff with those powers, and you can just keep stacking this, going and going and going. All right. It's huge amounts of minus recharge. So that's what I was really kind of gonna leverage as a control or as a damage mitigation is what I'm kind of leaning for. So I really was going for, you know what, screw it. I'm gonna go all in on this minus recharge and slow idea. Hit him with what you call it, cold snap, from range. So let's say have Arctic Air around, wade into them. I've also got Ice Slick, which also has been buffed a little bit by Homecoming. So Ice Slick is, the ice control power that everybody who does take ice control, if you're not taking Ice Slick, there's something wrong with you. This is the power that you're going for. It's still that patch. It still has the knockdown, but they did throw in some damage. Now, the advantage of the damage is, and I didn't do it on this build, but you could throw some damage procs into it. Again, I didn't do it because this build was built, I think, before the ice control changes were put in the game, and I forget the exact timing of that, but this build itself is a couple years old. So I never went and messed with the damage procs and Ice Slick, but you certainly can. Damage itself is not that great on Ice Slick, but it's a little bit extra than it didn't used to have. It still has the knockdown, right? And now you can put some damage procs in and start to milk this thing for even more utility. The one thing I never understood is why they don't put a slow set in it, because again, hey, what am I really going for? I'm going for the debuff of speed and stuff. Like, it has a pretty nice run speed debuff, 90% debuff on that power, so they can't just run away from it. And meanwhile, you're hitting them with all that other minus speed and all that other minus recharge. This doesn't have minus recharge, but does have minus speed. So that would have been nice to have like a slow set that you could put in here with Ice Slick. Because then I could see maybe like triple slotting with like endurance recharge slow from the 3 different main slow sets and get this thing, pretty juiced up for just a constant, just drop the bomb on people. But anyway, I didn't do that. It's just kind of standard slotted right now, but it's even more minus speed on top of all the other stuff. I've mostly been talking about minus recharge, but there's minus speed on a lot of these things as well. As you can see, like Frostbite here's got minus speed and minus recharge. So you start looking at, the debuffs to jumping, the debuffs to just, moving, 37.5% slow. This is not popping up for you guys there. Let me see if it'll show up if I do this. So this is, when I hover over it, it's going to show me anyway. There it is, 37.5% slow to the target, right? So anyway, you get the idea. So you're not just minus recharging everybody, you're also just minus speeding everybody, and they can't get away. So they will be confused, they will be slow, they're or feared, they're gonna want to try to get away, they're gonna want to try to shoot, they're gonna be just, wandering around, but just moving at a crawl. So that's the main point that you're trying to leverage out of ice controls. All this just slow, all this minus recharge, and getting the enemies just to not know what to do with themselves for the entire time it takes you to kill them. But you still have to survive that initial alpha strike. You still need to be aware that they're going to snap out of these soft controls and attack you. And if they happen to mez you and you lose your control on them, that kind of thing, you can see how that'll backfire pretty quickly. All right, then the last thing I have here is Jack Frost. That's your pet. He's like a little scrappery kind of guy running around hacking you with a sword. He's got, I think, a frost touch. Let's see if I can get the stuff to pop up on him or not. There we go. Let me pop this up. Pop up. All right, so there's Jack, his ice sword. It's got a 10% debuff. What is that? Minus recharge, I'm guessing. What that's going to be. We're going to scoot this down for you. So this is his sword. It's minus 10%. Yeah, it's a recharge debuff. It's got a slow debuff on it. He's got Chilling Embrace, which is nice. So that's a nice little slow. 70% slow to the targets in melee with him. It has a minus jump to it. Does it have the minus damage? Nope, just recharge and speed. So it's going to slow people down. Then he's also got Freezing Touch. So that's a hold. All right, a mag 3 hold he can do. Recharge every 16 seconds. So it's not like, going to lock down the entire enemy group for you. Greater Ice Sword, so another big attack with a sword. He's got some debuff on that, with the slow, with the recharge. And then he's got Ice Bolt, so he does have a single target range attack. It's not the greatest, but again, a little bit more debuff. Slowing, minus recharging. So he's a little mini ice controller, little mini ice scrapper, kind of the way I look at him. A little ice dominator. I don't know. He's just, running around doing silly, stupid things and usually getting himself killed pretty quick. But that's the main stuff from ice control. Lots of just speed and recharge debuffing. Now, hey, what's up with poison? Why ice and poison? Well, the main reason I went with poison, I'll get right to it, is because neurotoxic breath. And you kind of see the real sort of idea, the synergy, the whole reason I went out with this, or came up with this idea in the first place. Neurotoxic breath is essentially cold snap, right? It's that same cone, that same shivery minus recharge. The range on this is 60 feet. Cold snap is also 60 feet. So these two things are essentially equivalent in, does it give the radius? Yeah, because 135 radius. The arc on this is not as big. Arc is 30 foot radius on neurotoxic breath, where cold snap is 135. All right. So anyway, hold on. Let me fix my build real quick. There we go. Accidentally deleted cold snap. Anyway, so cold snap and neurotoxic breath together are sort of the fun that I was shooting for, because neurotoxic breath, like I said, is similarly cold snap. It doesn't do fear, but it does have a chance to hold. It's a 25% chance when immobilized. So I think that means if I have them immobilized, all right, or if they're, I don't know if it's any immobilized or this power itself immobilizes. I'm a little bit unsure, but I do know it can cause them to essentially choke out with a bit of hold. But check this out. It's got a minus 80, percent slow minus recharge, just like cold snap. So between cold snap and neurotoxic breath, you're minus 160 recharge right there. The run speed is like getting destroyed. The 81% slow. Right? I mean, it's just you're gonna destroy the enemy's ability to move just with those two, breath cone attacks from range. Boom, boom, and then you get into melee with Arctic air. So you can kind of see where quickly you can do, what is it, 80, 160, 220, 230% recharge debuffing with just the two cones and walking into range with Arctic air. You don't even need to hit them with anything else. They're going to be just floored with their recharge. So that's what's going on with that one. And they get the chance to possibly hold on that one. And that power does take some nice damage procs as well, because it's got slow sets that you can put in there. But beyond that, poison is just an awesome, debuff set. It's mostly single target. You got some splash in there, but mostly single target. I do have alkaloid, the single target heal. That's mostly for Jack Frost. If I'm on your team and you're expecting me to throw heals at you as a poison, no. Poison's like the worst buff, out there. If you're relying upon it's probably as bad as Storm, maybe worse. So if you have a Storm or a Poison Controller, Defender, Corruptor, they're not your healer. They're not your buffer. Okay, those are debuff sets. This is like a top off, scraping you off the floor. I'll throw you an Alkaloid after the fight. So don't look at me to throw Alkaloid on you. So I almost could respec and get rid of this Alkaloid, and yeah, I'm almost thinking fighting pool, because I'm thinking about this build a little bit. But anyway, Poison, Alkaloid. And Venom is then your next thing. Let me pull up the pop-up window so you can see these numbers better. So Venom is nice. This is minus resistance, minus defense, minus regen, minus heal, right? You got all this nasty stuff you can do to people, like messing up their recharge and stuff. Minus 20%. Was that damage resistance? Again, I'm not sure why there's two different numbers here. If somebody knows why they keep putting two numbers, I don't get it. But anyway, you're messing up people's minus resistance. This could be the splash, because I know it hits a target and it can splash to somebody next to them, so that might be what the two different numbers are. Minus 15% defense. Again, there's two sets of numbers here. Maybe one is the initial target, one's the splash. I don't know. And then it has the minus regen, 25 or 50%. Long story short, you're going to debuff the crap out of somebody that you hit with this. This is like, your AV killer type of attack. You're lowering resistance, lowering their defense, lowering their regen, lowering their ability to get their health back. So they're pretty much boned with Venom. Then weaken is your double tap. This is minus damage, minus to hit, and minus special. So you hit them with that, follow up, right? You're gonna jack up their to hit rolls. You're gonna jack up their damage output. Their ability to do mez themselves or whatever. Any specials that they're using, Weaken is going to trash that for them. But then you've got, I already mentioned, Neurotoxic Breath, minus speed, minus recharge. What else we got here? We got Paralytic Poison. This is another hold power that you get, so it allows you to stack your holds kind of quickly. Plus, it's a nice proc, little proc mule. So here's my Paralytic Poison. You can see I've got it slotted for a bunch of damage procs I'll take a look at in a second. But one thing I wish Paralytic Poison had some other secondary effect, because it's like the only power in Poison that doesn't have a secondary something going on with it. So I would love to see something else added to this. I don't know what, but it would be cool if there was something. Maybe some more minus damage. I don't know. Otherwise, you could potentially skip this power if, hey, I already got my hold with my control set. Do I need Paralytic Poison too? You could potentially skip it. I proc the crap out of it, so that's why I took it. Poison Trap. This is, of course, another, this may be the signature power of Poison itself. You little placeable trap. It explodes like you do like what does they call it? Toe mining or whatever the hell. Or you drop it right on the person's foot and it explodes. Right. I'd love to do this. Just run up to a group, drop this, boom. Big old hold and a PB AoE. What's the radius on this thing? Does it say? Doesn't say the radius, does it? I'm not seeing it here. But anyway, it's real quick. It pops off this hold, right? Mag 3, so you're going to lock down a bunch of dudes. It also has some pretty decent minus regen, minus 25% regen. Plus, remember, you get the minus regen from Venom. So it's kind of like your double tap against an AV to just like destroy their regen. It also has a minus endurance, minus recovery. That's not a very important feature. It doesn't really work that well personally from what I can see, but it's also really great procable power. You could put like the lockdowns proc in there to get the extra +2 mag hold. I've got a bunch of damage procs in mind just to freaking annihilate people with that thing. So that's what I love that for. And then I've also got Venomous Gas. This power, it's take it or leave it, but because I am going to be in melee, I took it. Let me pop it up so you can see what it does. So it's a toggle and it's minus resistance, so that's nice. Debuff, minus damage, that's nice. debuff minus defense, another debuff, and the minus to hit. So it is a aggressive, active melee range debuff, right? So kind of fights a little bit against the rest of the poison because most of the rest of the poison is from range and you're spitting and shooting stuff at people. But venomous gas, poison trap encourages you to go into melee. But I think when you combine it with what I'm doing here, right, I've got Arctic Air on already, which is doing minus speed, minus recharge, minus stealth, throwing some confusion. You then walk into melee with venomous gas, minus resistance, minus damage, minus defense, minus to hit. So you're pretty much a walking just debuffer. So that's why the melee I think is really important. You can fire from range to open up, but then you want to get into melee with this character and let those auras start to do their thing. And you're going to have to, because if you want to survive, you got shit for defense on this character. You got crap for damage resistance. Your mitigation is your control and like the confusion, the minus speed, the minus recharge, and stuff like venomous gases, debuffing of damage and minus to hit. I mean, if you're trying to play a range game, you're probably gonna get slaughtered because you just can't fire that far, and then people are blasting you from range. So that's definitely this character's weakness is you get range, you're in trouble. But if I can pull characters or pull enemies in close around a corner and get them into my stuff, forget it. They're done. Okay, they're not going to go anywhere. So that's what hopefully I'll be able to show you in the actual solos and then the team stuff. All right, then last but not least, let's get into almost last but not least, because we still have to talk about incarnates. But the other thing I've got going is Psi Mastery. And Psi Mastery, I like Psi Mastery in general, so I have it again on this character. I do have Mind Over Body is your not defense, it's your damage resistance, toggle, shield, smash, lethal, psionics, right? That's really my only active defense, I guess you want to call it on this, or not active, but my only like real like defense shield that I've got. Everything else is I'm attacking, I'm attacking, I'm attacking. I also took Indomitable Will. I don't think I necessarily need it. It's more of a low level game ability. It does have some side defense, and it does have Mez protection. But you'll see in my incarnates, I've got Clarion anyway, so it's kind of like I might as well just get rid of it. This is kind of where I'm thinking I might be able to go to a fight pool. If I ditch Alkaloid and ditch Indomitable Will, I can easily grab Boxing and then take Tough and get some more damage resistance to smash lethal. So Indomitable Will, do I need it? I've got it 3 slotted. I could easily ditch these and go with something else, combat jumping, whatever. Just give me something else. And I could take these exact same 3 slots and put it in a combat jumping or something. Anyway, then I got World of Confusion is probably the main thing I want to mention here. I really don't like this power, to be honest with you. The range on it sucks. The aura itself is not very large, but it's almost like a must if you're gonna run Arctic Air and try to rely upon confusion, because at least on a controller, Dominator it's a little bit different, because Dominators you can get domination from your Arctic Air's confusion and get that extra mag confused. But remember, Arctic Air, the confusion on this is only a mag 3, so you're not going to confuse bosses. This is why it's dangerous. Right? If I go into melee, sure, I can confuse minions and lieutenants, and bosses, no. Unless I get the overpower, critical holds or whatever the hell it's called with controllers. But if I have World of Confusion at the same time, this also has a confuse. It's a mag 2. Okay. And again, I think it's mag 1 is the extra bonus control, whatever. But you add those two together, now I can start confusing bosses. It's hit or miss, right? You need to hit with World of Confusion. I think it has an accuracy check, whereas Arctic Air I don't think has an accuracy check. Don't quote me on that one. I think there might be certain things are accuracy checks. But anyway, you can then potentially confuse bosses, like one-shot confuse. Plus, I've got the Contagious Confusion in Arctic Air, which I haven't talked about slotting yet, but that's the Coercive Persuasion purple set Contagious Confusion. So that's going to add an extra chance to confuse. What is it, a mag 3 confusion? It can 25% chance to proc. So kind of like, jump around. I think it causes the target to be, who is confused, to then jump to a neighboring enemy to be confused. So between Arctic Air's Confusion, World of Confusion's Confusion, and then the Contagious Confusion. Now I can really start spreading confusion. So that's the big reason why I have World of Confusion. Otherwise, it's not a great power, and it's just high endurance. At least for the juice isn't worth the squeeze, as they say, right? I mean, you got endurance draining that you're constantly pumping this thing. It doesn't last very long. It doesn't do much damage. So if you're trying to do, like, if this was your only confuse, then I wouldn't take it at all. It does have a damage and a little bit of confuse, but it also aggroes the crap out of stuff. So it's immediately you're going to start getting pounded on, and you're maybe confusing minions if you're lucky. So that's why it's a terrible power in most other scenarios. But this build, it kind of stacks. Then my other thing I'll mention is Cyanado, because this has a little bit of knockback, well, more like a knock up, I think. So this is a good power to kind of add to the mix because it gives me a little bit more mitigation, because now I can maybe throw this to a ranged group of foes that are shooting me and knock them up in the air and give me a second to maybe duck around a corner or drop an ice slick or something like that over there. So a little bit more mitigation. It's not going to make or break your day, though. All right, so that is the main power sets that I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, I took Force of Will. I like this as a pool power set because Weaken Resolve is a nice debuff, minus resist, minus defense, minus hit, because this is going to stack nicely with my my poison debuffs. So let's take a look at the numbers on Weaken Resolve. There it is, lock it in. So minus 10 defense, 7.5 resist, 5 to hit debuff. So you can take that and start stacking it with Venom, who has resistance, defense, debuffing. Weaken has the minus to hit debuffing, right? So you're adding up more ability to debuff. This character really is meant to be just a debuffing, proc, monstering controller. I'm not healing you, I'm not supporting the team, right? I'm just focusing on, let's say, an AV or something like that. I can tear down bosses and AVs pretty good with this build the way I've got it slotted. Large groups, I'm not so sure. I think the solo is gonna be a tough thing for this character, this build to handle, but we'll see what happens. All right, so last thing I do want to talk about though is the slotting and then how that leads into some of your incarnates, because my incarnates are gonna have to fill in a lot of gaps here, because what you'll see, if it's not obvious, is with all these damage procs, I've had to skimp on a lot of sort of basic, accuracy, endurance, damage, that kind of stuff. So Chillblain, right? Check it out. I got 1 proc, 2 procs, 3 procs, 4 damage procs on that one. Then Block of Ice, 1 damage, 2 damage, 3 damage, 4 damage procs on that one. And Venom, I've got 1 damage proc, 2 damage procs, resistance debuff proc. All right, so I've got 4 procs, 4 procs, 3 procs so far in those powers. Arctic Air, proc, 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 the energy font. Contagious Confusion, that's a proc. So 4 on that one. Cold Snap, I've got a proc there. Neurotoxic Breath, I've got a proc on that one. Frostbite, proc, 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 proc of the resistance debuff, proc again. And I only have 1 in this power that is not a damage or resistance proc. So Frostbite's kind of like my big hitter. I hate to, is it gonna do all the damage at one time? No, but it's a lot more damage than it was doing. Then what else we got? Weaken Resolve. I've got proc, 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 no proc. So 3 procs in that one. Project Will, that's from the Force of Will. This is a single target, like knockback power, but I got a proc, damage, 2 on that one. Prelude of Poison, 1 proc, 2 procs, 3 procs on that one. Wall of Force, we got a proc, we got a proc, we got a proc, we got a resistance debuff proc. Jack Frost doesn't have any procs. Poison Trap, proc, 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 3 on that one. Venomous Gas, proc. Resistance proc. Proc. Indomitable Will, using it kind of a little bit more of a set mule. I got the knockback protection in it. World of Confusion, already mentioned this a little bit. Got a damage proc in there. No, 2 damage procs in that one. Cyanado, resistance debuff proc. Javelin Volley proc. Positrons proc. Then I got Mind Over Body. This is my only kind of real damage mitigation. resistance, defense, unique. And then I've got a miracle sitting down here because endurance is going to be an issue on this character. If you know anything about ice control and Arctic air, it's brutal. Let me go ahead and pop up the numbers so you can see my scoot out of the way. Recovery is 3. My end drain is 1-7. So I'm not even 2-1. This character's going to hemorrhage endurance. If I start attack, I'm going to be bleeding out endurance like you wouldn't believe. So Miracle helps a little bit with that, but not a ton. I really don't have anywhere else to put like a plus recovery or anything of that nature. So I'm kind of screwed, but that's why for my incarnate choices, you'll see what I ended up doing. So down here in the incarnates, I did go with Vigor Radial Paragon because this is going to give me more accuracy, which I'm going to need because so much of my procking has reduced my overall accuracy of all my powers. So Vigor Radial is going to give me accuracy. It's going to be healing, which help a little bit with the health recovery. I think it might mess, and don't quote me on it. I forget if it messes with minus regen or not. I think I saw it bumping something in one of the stats somewhere, but I don't know that for a fact. The minus heal one, is it this one? Let me see what happens if I turn on vigor. Yeah, it doesn't show it. All right, I take it back. I don't think it does anything. So anyway, whatever. It's there. Extra health. But the main thing I'm getting out of it is close to pop-up window. Is the confused duration, the endurance reduction, the fear duration. So I'm getting some extra control out of it, and I'm getting the endurance. So if I go back to my totals now and I activate it with vigor going, now my drain is down to I'm in the way again. Let me pop out the window. So my endurance drain is 132, recovery's 3. So that's better, right? That's like 2-1, 2.5-1, something like that. So I like that better. It's definitely going to help with regen overall. And it's definitely going to help with my controls because I really didn't slot for controls, right? I slotted for damage procs. So now I'm going to get extra fear duration, get extra confused duration. So that's what I have that for. I went with melee hybrid because, as I already said, I'm going to be in melee. So I took it so that I get more regen, more defense, some status protection because I need to have status protection. So I have that. Give me a little bit of boost. So my regen goes up to 180. All right, my end drain drops a little bit as well, which I'm not sure why it would affect end drain. So that part I don't understand why that number goes down. Why would hybrid melee? Is there a passive? Let me double check. Is there passive endurance on that one? Nope, just regen. Anyway, I don't know if that's a typo or not, but it's showing in mids that the melee radial's doing something to endurance, which it shouldn't. It's weird. So my end drain is going from 132 to. Okay, now it's not doing it. That's funny. Swear to God, that thing was changing just a second ago. All right, well, anyway, guess it fixed itself. Okay. Then I took Mighty. Mighty is the big old judgment. You jump up, ground pound, and knock everything up in the air. So that's going to be a nice extra mitigation, extra damage, of course, melee range. I've got Clarion. I already mentioned Clarion because if you're playing a squishy, you're going to need the status protection from the special. So I've got status protection from the melee radial already. I'm getting more from Clarion, of course. And remember, I also had taken, what is it, Indomitable Will up here from the Psy Mastery. So I have ways of getting out of Mez. That's not a problem at all. That's why I don't even think I need Indomitable Will anymore. I think I could get rid of it. Might free up some stuff in the build. But anyway, Clarion, that, click that puppy. I mean, by the way, check out how terrible my just defenses are. Defenses are in the single digit. My smash lethal, which is my best, is only 40%. It's terrible. This character has 0 survivability really in combat. If I lose control or they start shooting me or are not affected by controls or the minus speed recharge, I'm dead. I mean, it's just gonna happen. So anyway, Clarion, that's gonna be a nice little boost to all my specials, right? So all my controls are gonna get boosted by that. Status protection, extra range, right? Then I've got the diamagnetic is my debuffing interface, some more minus to hit, some more minus regen, because that'll help me take out, hard targets more easily, or at least survive them more easily. So the regen on that is minus 10%. Remember, I got minus regen on my Envenom as well as on my poison trap, so that is going to stack with those nicely. And it's giving me some more minus to hit debuffing, which is going to stack with, what is it, weaken and the venomous gas, I think, has the other minus to hit. So I'm getting some mitigation from the minus to hit, but it's a very active, I have to be attacking, I have to be in melee, I have to be doing things. Otherwise, I'm not gonna get any of these benefits. And then I get, last but not least, the IDF superior allies. What I'm going for, they give me some shielding with the little drone thing that follows you around, little support battle drone, whatever it is. And I do like the IDF boss. I think he's got the rocket jetpack thing that shoots all the missiles and stuff like that. That's a great, pretty good damage on that guy as well. All right, so that, my friends, is this build. This is Venom Kiss. This is this crazy PROC-TROLLER build that, you know, we'll see. I mean, you'll see for yourself. On paper, right? This is a classic on paper. On paper, look at all the damage from these procs, right? Holy crap. Like, Chillblame, man, you're going to get 112.5. What is that? Per tick or something like that. You got Block of Ice. Holy crap. That's 169.3. Oh my gosh. And Venom can do 41 weak. I got all these things doing damage apparently, right? If all the procs fire, if the enemy just stands there and takes it, but how does it actually work in play? That's what we need to find out. All right, so there you go. That is the build. I think this will be an interesting one. I'm really not, I don't think this build's going to do well solo. I don't think so at all. But we'll see. Depends on the map. It'll depend if I can get enemies, if I can get them around the corner, if I can get them clustered around me tight, it'll be okay. But if I have to play range with this group, melee with another group, people are taking off running, that's going to be a problem. So we'll see what happens. All right, we'll catch you in the solos later.